Talked with a Democrat on veto session. Now it's time to talk to a Republican to see if their experience was a little different during the fall session. We have Travis Weaver here, who represents Pekin and some areas of Peoria. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Cameron. It's always a pleasure.
All right, I'll start the same way I started with Kayla.
Sure.
Let's go straight into transit, because there's so many different proposals and so many different things, and now we've seen the final product.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so if there's one thing I want your listeners to remember is that Chicago Transit was in a $200 million annual operating deficit, and Illinois Democrats threw $2.5 billion at it to fix it. It was a total waste of funds, and the unfortunate part is that the money is coming from the people that I represent down here in Downstate. So a big chunk of that $2.5 billion, 1.1 billion of that, almost half, is coming from our Downstate Road Fund. You and I don't pay our gas tax to bail out Chicago Transit. You and I pay our gas tax so that we can have good roads here in Peoria. So I was really, really disappointed to see how that came together. And unfortunately, it did nothing to actually fix the operational problems that Chicago Transit's facing. They have people there that are making $50 an hour that take home $250,000 a year because they cannot control their overtime, they cannot get crime controlled on the tracks, and they haven't had a fare increase for 15 years. So maybe before you come to Downstate to bail you out, let's at least talk about having a fare increase.
Right, right. And I'm very interested from the Republican side, what were some of the funding proposals that, if you were in the seat and you had to do the bailout, basically, how would you go around it?
Well, if you run a business and you have an operating problem, you don't go to your banker and say, hey, can I borrow $1 million and maybe my operating problem will go away. The first thing you do is address the operating problem. So if we would have had this discussion about how we're going to get fares increased, how are we going to get crime taken care of on the tracks, what are we going to do about our operating budget, how do we get the different transits to talk to each other so that their schedules match up and we have more efficiencies there. If we go down that path and then they come to Downstate, well, frankly, I'm still probably going to be a no because it's not our problem. But I just think that'd be a much smarter way to go about it. And I actually could have seen myself get to be a yes if there were legitimate structural fixes in place, and there were none.
Right, okay, so a bit more. You wanted to see a lot more reform before the funding. I think as well, one of the other big talking points has been the energy bill, and I think I've seen Republicans all across social media saying, this will increase your rates, this will increase your rates. Explain to me how this will increase your rates. Yeah,
well, Ronald Reagan said that the worst words you can hear, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. We have exploding energy rates here in the state of Illinois. In 2016, the Illinois General Assembly passed a bill called FEJA that was supposed to reduce rates. It increased them. In 2021, there was a bill called CEJA, again supposed to reduce energy costs. It increased them. Now we're dealing with a bill they call SURJA, not a joke, and there's no question what SURJA is going to do to our energy prices. It's an $8 billion bill that's going to fund batteries in the state of Illinois. The dirty little secret is that batteries don't produce any power. Batteries store power, and they actually waste power because of heat transfer. So typically if a battery absorbs, let's say, 1 megawatt of power, they'll give you back maybe 0.8 or 0.75.
Right, so, law of conversion, basically.
That's right. And I'm not an electrical engineer, but smart people tell me this. So they use power, and it'll directly show up on your bill. There's an $8 billion project that you and I are going to pay for. We've got to get serious about producing energy in the state of Illinois. We do have energy demand going up, but the highest energy demand year ever in the state of Illinois was 2011. And so there's a lot of concerns about the future and data centers and AI and what exactly that's going to mean. But the reality is that that hasn't hit yet. And so the energy challenges that we're experiencing today are strictly due to bad policy.
And I think you were a supporter of the nuclear moratorium ending. And I think as well, I'm very curious as to, if you guys were in the seat and you were the deciding vote, so Republicans had the majority, how would you have handled this kind of energy crisis that's upon us?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because the nuclear was the silver lining. If I was in the catbird seat and I was making the decisions, I think in the short term, we've got to break the caps on our nuclear gas peaker plants. We have natural gas capacity that could be producing today, but we put arbitrary artificial caps in place that don't allow those plants to produce. And number two, in the medium term, we've got to stop shutting down some of the world's cleanest coal and natural gas plants, because when we shut those down, we import dirty coal and natural gas from other states. And then in the long term, we've got to get serious about our nuclear transition. I do appreciate that this bill lifted that moratorium on nuclear, but in the short term, we could dramatically reduce our power costs by breaking the caps on those natural gas peaker plants.
And just very briefly, was there a piece of legislation that you were pretty happy with this year?
Well, I would say despite the flaws of the energy bill at large, that nuclear component is huge. It's our way forward. It's clean, reliable, affordable power. We had a 50-year-long moratorium on nuclear, so getting that fixed is really a big step in the right direction.
All right, thank you so much for coming on.
Always
Appreciate
a pleasure.
it.
Thanks, Cameron.
Now, next up, we'll have your local sports and find out what's happening in your area. Stay tuned.